Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The 49ers got the week 1 win, but at what cost? Also, the Dolphins have problems, and we've got solutions. Plus, is Steph Curry still a top 5 player in the NBA?
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
If there's one thing 49ers fans would have told you for certain about the 49ers in 2025, it's that they couldn't possibly have bigger problems with injuries than they did last year. Well, so far 2025 says hold my beer, because George Kittle is going to miss a couple weeks here. And now Brock Purdy is not a lock to play this weekend against the New Orleans Saints. Brian Peacock joins me now from Locked On 49ers, and of course, Peacock Williamson. And Brian, this is a team that came into the year banged up with Brandon Ayuk, dealing with his post-ACL recovery, Juwan Jennings with contract-related calf issues coming into the year, and now very real injuries for this 49ers team.
Luckily, it's not a season ender for George Kittle, but he's going to go on IR, so he's going to miss the next 4 games through week 5, which probably puts him right about the same time frame as when Brandon Ayuk's going to be back. So Brandon Ayuk had the big ACL injury. That was the long-term injury that was really the big worry for the 49ers coming into the year. And now George Kittle is going to play maybe one more quarter than Brandon Ayuk this entire season. It was a nice little quarter, though, and George Kittle looking like himself. He's a big loss. The 49ers' best drive was when George Kittle was on the field. Not only did he score the touchdown, but he's obviously one of the best, if not the best, run-blocking tight end in the NFL. And the Niners didn't get a lot going on the ground after that, as much as they tried to, with 31 total touches for Christian McCaffrey, and he's only going to get more workload, which is unsustainable. Christian McCaffrey already dealing with the calf last year, the Achilles tendonitis. You can't give him 500 touches that he's on pace to have this year. So it is a conundrum for the 49ers, and it might be Mac Jones starting in New Orleans against the Saints in week 2. I guess the only silver lining for the 49ers right now is that they are going to play one of the worst teams in the NFL. And I do think Mac Jones could be a nice fit in Kyle Shanahan's offense, albeit not a guy who should.
This is what Kyle Shanahan wanted all along, right?
I mean, he should have never been considered, let alone the first round, the top 3 pick that you trade up for in the 2021 NFL draft. I think we know that now. But as backups go, a solid backup quarterback, a fit for the scheme, and we'll see. It's still up in the air whether or not Brock Purdy is going to be ready to go. But all of it together, it just makes for another. It can never be normal for the San Francisco 49ers. And to be honest with you, it's good when you're covering the team because there's always something weird going on.
That's what Locked On 49ers is for, of course. And by the way, we have to say the 49ers won the game in week 1 because of their backup tight end. So it's not like they don't have some other guys here who Kyle Shanahan, we know what he can do with chicken you-know-what and chicken salad. That's usually what he's able to make.
Yeah, I mean, Mac Jones throwing to Jake Tonjes, and the Niners will still lead the league. And
it won't be the third quarter of a preseason game.
Yeah. By the way, it was Jake Tonjes' first NFL catch and first NFL touchdown in that game. So that's where the 49ers are right now on their depth chart. Very thin with some offensive playmakers. And we'll see how long Christian McCaffrey holds up, because Kyle Shanahan can't quit him. And when the game's on the line, he's going to keep calling that number 23. And I don't know how long you can sustain that many touches and that much of a workload for Christian McCaffrey, but it's going to be all Christian McCaffrey for the foreseeable future, I think, for the 49ers. Ricky Pearsall, nice little debut in year 2 for him.
Sure.
A nice offseason for him, and clearly the wide receiver 1 for at least the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, they didn't really have many other options. You got to hope now, especially if Mac Jones can go, that this young defense can step forward. A slew of new starters, rookie starters, first-time contributors. What did you make of this defense in week 1?
It was hit and miss with the young players on the defensive side of the ball. They started 3 rookies: Michael Williams, the first rounder; Marcus Siegel, the 6th round safety. And then Upton Stout was the starting nickel, who was targeted a ton by Sam Darnold in the Seahawks offense with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and some of the defensive linemen rotating in. Alfred Collins, mostly not good, but not very many snaps for him. He's a work in progress, a massive human being, but a little bit of a project, I think, for the 49ers there. And so I think the big addition on defense was Robert Saleh, and that unit still came through okay. And he, threw a bunch of different looks and a bunch of different defensive line rotations. And I just think that competition for snaps among the defensive linemen, especially the newcomers, is going to continue and is continuing into the season. But even a 4 defensive end look, which I liked for the 49ers, with Mykel Williams moving inside with Yetur Gross-Matos, and bringing in Bryce Huff, who they brought in the offseason on the edge opposite Nick Bosa. And obviously Nick Bosa was able to call again with the strip sack to end it for the San Francisco 49ers. And despite a kicker who is now gone in Jake Moody missing a kick, the Niners still came out of week 1 with a win.
You can stay up to date all year on the San Francisco 49ers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On 49ers on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, can the Dolphins actually solve their problems? Before we get to that, Deion Sanders is frustrated with the media. The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes are still trying to figure out quarterback 3 weeks into the season. According to reports, the Buffs are going with third stringer Ryan Staub, but not so fast. Sanders denied the report on Tuesday and expressed his frustration with the media.
The Colorado Buffaloes have decided on a starting quarterback, or have they? ESPN's Pete Thamel reported that Ryan Staub will get the start on Friday against Houston. However, when speaking to the media on Tuesday, Coach Prime said he's not ready to name a starter. So looks like we're just going to have to wait and see who trots out first. That being said, Ryan Staub was getting first-team reps, a majority of the first-team reps, as we saw in the well-off media videos. So certainly an interesting situation in Boulder, but we've come to expect nothing less. I'm Kevin Borba, host of Locked On Buffs.
Over on the Diamonds, Yankees were crushed by the Tigers.
9 runs in the 7th inning. 9, count them 9. I'm Brian McKean from Locked On Yankees, and the New York Yankees dropped Game 1 of their series 12-2 to the Detroit Tigers while giving up 9 runs in the 7th inning. Absolutely devastating. The way I would look at this game, piece of loose leaf, toss it in the bin. A loss is a loss. A 1-0 loss counts in the standings the exact same way that this 12-2 loss counts. It's a little more hurtful because you saw the Toronto Blue Jays losing 3-0 in this game, so you thought, okay, you're going to be even after this game still, and the Blue Jays come back, win the game 4-3, so they gained a game on you. It does happen. It's a loss, not the end of the world. You get Carlos Rodon going tomorrow, who's been your absolute stopgap, followed by Cam Schlittler, who's been awesome. Yankees have the advantage in pitching the rest of this series and can still come away with it positive. It's only 1 loss.
The Astros tried to squeeze past the Blue Jays.
Are they good enough? Are they that team? For the first time all season long, I'm questioning, are they that team? They're 78-67. They should have at least 86 wins right now. They should be 4 away from 90. They should be the number 1 or number 2 team in the American League. They have had so many opportunities. They've lost games by 1 run. They've lost games with low scores. They've lost games where they've had leads and they've lost them late. It's just not a good sign. And I'm telling you, part of it is the bullpen. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Brian Abreu. I love Brian Abreu. I think he's one of the best in the game. But at the same time, he is really feeling the pressure and really feeling the heat since Mr. Josh Hader has gone out.
And Jalen Carter won't be missing any time after spitting on Dak Prescott in the opener. The NFL ruled that since Carter was ejected without taking a single snap, that counts as serving his 1-game suspension. He'll lose his $57,000 week 1 check, but he'll be back on the field for next week's Super Bowl rematch with the Chiefs. You spit once, you sit once, I guess. In Carter's case, only for a game he never even played. After getting run out of the stadium by the Colts, it's clear that the Dolphins have some issues. That might be understating it. Locked On Dolphins host Kyle Krabs did his best to provide solutions to Miami's problems.
I think the thing that frustrated me the most with this game in particular was the coaching elements of the game. Now, you had really frustrating performances. I graded Tua Tagovailoa in particular to the same ±2 point scale that I did last year for all the players, and we posted those grades every week over on Touchdown Miami. I'm doing a little bit more film study type invested stuff over there now, but I did want to compare the grade. We'll get to Tua when we go to offensive players. From a coaching perspective, made personnel moves, talked about what you wanted to do differently this year. And I understand the game script fell a certain way, but this is going to include both sides of the ball here. The things you talked about throughout the course of the offseason, the things you talked about in training camp that you wanted to be, were not the things you put on tape. The Dolphins, let's just use the defensive side of the ball as an example. I just got done working through the defensive game tape. Dolphins talked a lot about our corners. We're working on a lot of press technique. We want to give our guys the opportunity to disrupt the timing of the routes to allow this pass rush that we have to get home. And maybe it was the down and distance wasn't right, but you had a lot of 1st and 10s, and you had guys playing outside leverage and 8 yards off the ball. We didn't have a lot of in-your-face on 1st and 10. We didn't have a lot of in-your-face on 2nd and 4. And I understand, you want to play the averages and you want to play every down individually, but you had way, way too much open air in the underneath, and it negated the strength of your defense. And I think that the alignment strategy, before you even get into individual players and what they did or didn't do it, or how explosive they looked or how physical they were, that stood out to me as being an area that I was underwhelmed with, just on the defensive side of the ball. People say, where's Zach Sealer? Where's Bradley Chubb? Where's Jalen Phillips? Where's Chop Robinson? Where's Kenneth Grant? These guys are no-shows. Well, you had a lot of open air. And some of it's growing pains, right? There's Jason Marshall in the nickel, and he drops out into the flat. And I don't know if he doesn't see the back running the swing route, but he kind of, it's a tight, condensed formation, and that number one receiver to that side is inside the numbers. He's closer to the hash, and he goes vertical in a corner. And Marshall carries him to the deep player that's playing that portion of the field. But then Marshall's technically the flat. And if you draw a point and draw a triangle between Marshall and the two receivers that he's leveraging, one of those being the back out of the backfield, it was not a well-balanced triangle. There was a great amount of space, and then Marshall has to get up and try to rally and tackle Jonathan Taylor in the flat, and he doesn't make the play. And so some of it's growing pains, but not all of it. And everything we heard was that the Dolphins want to be a team that disrupts timing inside the contact window, and I didn't think they played that way in week one. And that, to me, was not congruent, and it's part of the expectations you set for the team is based on what you're seeing and what they're telling you they're going to do. But then if you don't do that, then you kind of have to go back to square one to evaluate what you have. And on the offensive side of the ball, that has never been more true. Did I think Mike McDaniel called as bad of a game as 8 points and 200 yards of offense would seem to indicate? No. Did some of the same really frustrating blind spots and pain points and issues persist throughout this tape? Yeah. The Dolphins had half of their snaps, half of their offensive snaps, and they didn't get a lot of them, were snapped with 5 seconds or less left on the play clock. Okay, that's half their snaps. I want to put this into context for you. I have these numbers for Tua Tagovailoa, and I also have them for the Dolphins as a whole since the start of 2023. Since the start of 2023, the Dolphins have the third highest passer rating in the NFL since the start of 23. Third highest pass rating on dropbacks in which the ball is snapped with 6 seconds or more on the play clock. So more than 5 seconds. Third highest passer rating in the NFL. But over that period of time, they have the 5th lowest amount of dropbacks, raw dropbacks in the NFL, that the ball is snapped with that much time left on the clock. They conversely have the 5th most snaps in the NFL where dropbacks with 5 seconds or less. And their passer rating with 5 seconds or less is 20th in the NFL. It's down 20 points. Your passer rating drops 20 points over the last 3 years. 23, 24, and the first game in 25. So it's a 35 game sample size. That's not a small drop. And this is not just Snoop Huntley and Skylar Thompson. The Tua Tagovailoa splits are 15 passer rating points different. 15 passer points lower when you snap the ball with 5 seconds or less left on the play clock. And yet half of your snaps in week 1, you had all offseason to prep the plan and get the guys ready to go operationally. And I understand you didn't do install for the Colts for 6 months. I get that. But it's the kind of thing we've been talking about for 2+ years now. And it was kind of a quirk, and you accepted it with all the explosive plays, and then you accepted it with all the points. And since the start of 2024, the points and the explosive plays have gone away, and it's kind of just become this really frustrating extra layer.
Stay up to date all year on the Miami Dolphins by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Dolphins on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, is Steph Curry still a top 5 player? Steph Curry has already cemented himself as one of the best players of all time. But is he still one of the very best players in the league at this stage of his career? Locked On NBA host Nick Angstad and Danny Cunningham discuss.
But I don't know about top 5 for me.
Right. I think top 5 is a bit much. Like, if you want to say he's still in the top 10, I can't necessarily push back on that. And I do think, to be clear here, we talked about the top 4 not really having arguments there. I think there's a pretty big gap between whoever you have at number 4, one of those guys between Luka, Giannis, SGA, Jokic, and then whoever you have at number 5. Like, there's a big jump between those two groups. But I think if you are to be considered a top 5 player in the world, we shouldn't have to be talking about needing to get Jimmy Butler to save your team, because that is exactly what happened last year. And the Golden State Warriors still did not get very deep in the postseason. Yeah, they had a 1-0 lead over the Minnesota Timberwolves. They were not going to win that series. They couldn't close out the Houston Rockets in quick order after they had a 3-1 lead. And the winning aspect is what Steph was. I don't know if that's what Steph still is. Since they won the title, they have finished 6th, 10th, 7th in the West. Like, this has not been some great winning team over the last 3 years. They've had some nice moments, certainly, but I think when we talk about winning with Steph, we're talking about the guy that Steph was.
Whether the number is 5, 8, whatever arbitrary cutoff you want to land on, Steph Curry is one of the best, most impactful players in the league still. Yes, still. The shooting, the playmaking, the gravity that he creates, it's all still there. What he does is sui generis. No one else does what he does. And he launched a million young kids who think they can be Steph Curry because, hey, I only have to be 6'2", 6'3" to be Steph Curry. He's changed basketball, but you don't just get to ride on those laurels. He's still an extremely impactful player, still one of the best, most explosive scorers, and still the best shooter in the NBA. This is not late career Dirk Nowitzki where he's coming off the bench and 14 minutes, 17 minutes. No. Steph Curry is still the engine of the Warriors. He's still an incredible basketball player. And it wasn't that long ago he led his team to a finals and won. So Steph Curry, still one of the very best, one of the truly elite players in the NBA. And finally, a bit of history. lining up at present for the Green Bay Packers. When Green Bay faces Washington on September 11th, it'll echo the first game the team played after the 9/11 attacks back in 2001. Also against Washington, this on Monday Night Football. That night, Chris Gizzy sprinted out of the tunnel carrying the American flag, a moment that still gives me chills all these years later. And the team the Packers played before that Washington game, the Detroit Lions, the Packers' Week 1 opponent. The date, the opponent, all still the same. And of course, the memories, impossible to ignore. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, we get you set for that Thursday night clash between the Packers and Commanders. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.